Researchers in Massachusetts believe they may be on the brink of creating a revolutionary non-addictive painkiller. It could be a big step forward in dealing with the growing opioid crisis. It is called Blue 181, and it was developed by researchers at Blue Therapeutics. They've been working for years to create a drug as powerful as opioids, but they claim without the dangers. Kenneth Craig sat down with the team behind it for an interview you'll see only on CBS This Morning. Kenneth, good morning.
Good morning. The team at Blue Therapeutics says it wanted to make a drug that is a total replacement for the opioids currently on the market, something that people could safely stop using without the possible dangerous side effects.
And not many people know they're addicts until they start using.
Mark Lochesano felt a gratification from painkillers with his very first pill, prescribed by a doctor for a sports injury. It was the beginning of an opioid addiction that consumed his 20s and nearly cost him his life.
I ended up wrapping my work truck around the telephone pole one night on my way home from work, and that wasn't even enough for me to stay clean.
Mark is now in treatment at St. Christopher's Inn, run by a ministry of the Franciscan Friars of the Atonement in Garrison, New York. He's part of a staggering number of Americans swept up in the nation's opioid epidemic. But now, these three Harvard-trained scientists believe they've developed a breakthrough, a non-narcotic painkiller 50 times more powerful than morphine, but is non-addictive.
We were told the same thing about the painkillers currently on the market, that they were non-addictive, that there was no risk for dependency, and look where we are now.
The onus is really on all of us to make sure that the scientific rigor is maintained.
The team at Blue Therapeutics is part of the pharmaceutical race to find powerful opioid alternatives. They believe the answer lies in their molecule, Blue 181. It works by clinging to a different receptor in the central nervous system than opioids, eliminating the narcotic high, abuse, and dependence risks.
It targets receptors in the spinal cord, where you are able to reduce the perception of pain without targeting areas of the brain which lead to, the addiction side effects.
Several other biotech companies, as well as researchers at universities, are working to develop similar drugs with different approaches. Blue is preparing for its first clinical trial, but the compound hasn't been tested in humans yet. Dr. Robert Griffin specializes in pain management.
It takes a long time to really know all the long-term effects and really to prove that something has no risk of addiction over time.
Blue 181 is backed by more than $2 million in funding from the National Institutes of Health and Department of Defense, which sees Blue 181 as promising for injured veterans, especially vulnerable to addiction and overdose.
Do you see your concept as part of the solution to combating the opioid epidemic?
Absolutely. I think the opioid epidemic, the main driver of it is the fact that a lot of us are in pain. And if we don't give effective painkillers, we're never going to solve the problem.
Blue Therapeutics says it could be 5 years or so before the drug makes it through clinical trials to see if they confirm its claims. The National Institutes of Health and Pharma, a trade group that represents U.S. pharmaceutical companies, both say they are also working to fund and develop non-addictive opioid alternatives.
Boy, that could be transformative for so many people. Just when you said that, I actually Googled because I wanted to see the number of deaths from opioids, which by last year has surpassed the number of deaths from Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan combined. They've got to find an alternative.
And when you look at the guy in our piece who's been battling an addiction for 10 years, he told me something like this could have made all the difference in the course of his life if he had the option 10 years ago.
A lot of interest there.
Thank you, Kenneth.